Hey everyone, I'm Jono. It's lovely to see you all. So I'm going to be reading our first Bible reading, and that's from Matthew chapter 27, verses 32 to 44. It'll pop up on the screen, but I'll give you a moment to find it if you've got a Bible with you. And as we jump into the story, Jesus is heading towards the cross. So starting at verse 32. As they went out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. They compelled this man to carry his cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they offered him wine to drink, mixed with gall. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his garments among them by casting lots. Then they sat down and watched him and kept watch over him there. And over his head they put the charge against him, which read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Then 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left. And those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads and saying, "You who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." So also the chief priests with the scribes and elders mocked him, saying, "He saves others, he cannot save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now, if he desires him. For he said, 'I am the Son of God.'" And the robbers who were crucified with him also reviled him in the same way.
Hi everyone. Just waiting for someone to arrive, sorry.
Oh, so many people! Oh, hello everybody!
Hi Sam.
Oh, this is a bit exciting. We get to see real people instead of looking at a video camera.
True, we've been doing lots of speaking to people via video, Sam. But some people here might not have met you, even via video.
Oh, yes. Well, hi everyone. I'm Sam. Super awesome, magnificent. And I love St Matthias Church. We have fun every week learning about Jesus from the Bible. And, oh, what about you, Erin?
Yeah, my name's Erin, if I haven't met you before. And I'm on the staff team here at St Matthias and working with children and women.
Well, Erin, you know how I love to ask questions?
Yes, Sam, and we love your questions.
Well, I was wondering why today is called Good Friday.
That's a good question. Can you think of any reasons that it might be called good?
Well, I suppose we don't have to go to school. And we had a lot of hot cross buns for breakfast. That was delicious. And we get to go to church an extra time because I love kids' church.
That's great to hear, Sam. But those reasons aren't why we call it Good Friday. We'll have to hear from the Bible what happened on the first Good Friday.
You mean like that true story we just heard from the Bible?
Yeah, that was the first Good Friday.
Well, I was thinking that did not sound like a very good Friday.
I know. Which bits made you think that?
Well, they went to the place of a skull. That sounds like a pretty scary place. And also, I was a bit confused because they called Jesus a king, but kings usually have thrones, and I don't remember any thrones.
No, that's right. Jesus was hanging on a cross.
Also, kings are usually very important, and they're treated very well. And people have to say, "Sir, excuse me, pardon, your highness." But it didn't sound like people treated Jesus very well.
No, they were teasing him and saying nasty things to him. Very unkind.
Yeah, and instead of helping him, they said, "Help yourself. Ha ha ha. You're hanging on a cross. Get yourself down."
Very nasty.
Yeah, it doesn't sound good at all. It sounds like like something terrible will happen, and it sounds like Jesus will die. That isn't good.
I think we'll have to hear the rest of the story from the Bible, Sam.
Yeah, I want to know what is good about Good Friday.
Well, you can, because we're all going to stay in together for church today.
Oh, wow, how cool.
So some activity packs are going to come round for all the children, and they'll help you hopefully follow along during the sermon and the Bible reading. And there's also some things to colour in there, and there might even be a treat.
Oh, great. Okay, well, I better go and get my seat and my activity pack and my listening ears. Okay, I'm going to get my kids' pack and see why Good Friday's really good.
While Sam goes and gets his activity pack and we hand out the rest, you might like to just turn and say hello to the people sitting next to you for a minute or two.
Well, good morning, everyone. We might come back together now. All right, we've got our second Bible reading happening now. If you'd like to finish up those conversations, it's lovely that we can enjoy our time together this morning. We're going to be continuing on with the story that we just heard. So we're reading from Matthew chapter 27, verses 45 to 56. And my name is Bethany, if I haven't met you before. Now from the 6th hour, there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And some of the bystanders hearing it said, "This man is calling Elijah." And one of them at once ran and took a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and put it on a reed and gave it to him to drink. But the others said, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him." And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. And behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth shook and the rocks were split. The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. When the centurion and those who were with him, keeping watch over Jesus, saw the earthquake and what took place, they were filled with awe and said, "Truly, this was the Son of God." There were also many women there, looking on from a distance, who had followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering to him, among whom were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee.
Thanks, Beth. Good morning, everyone. My name's James. It is terrific to see people here. Last year was interesting, and so it's so good to see everyone back in the building this year again. And without masks, g'day, Rem. Good to see you, mate. Feel free to wave to me at any point if that makes you feel better. That's fine. For much of the last year, I've held off from kind of getting into the cult that is the musical Hamilton. And I said to particularly my twins, "How can you watch a musical on a TV screen? That's just stupid." Until it started raining a few weeks ago, and raining, and so in that moment of weakness I relented and was drawn into this musical. I think at first it was the kind of history lesson I never had. I'm pretty weak on 18th century American history, and so that was fun. But more than that, it was the complexity of the human character of Hamilton that really drew me in. The complexity of someone who is both a driven genius, but also very flawed as well. A hero and a villain. A genius and a fool. How do you kind of explain that human complexity? How do you make a decision as to who he is and whether he should be remembered? That's the point of the musical, I take it. This forgotten father of modern America, should we actually reclaim his story? That is, this is not just a history lesson, I take it. It's a personal challenge. How do you respond to his life? To his genius and his flaws? Is he a hero to remember? Or is it right that he left in public shame and he should be forgotten? Friends, as we come today to the cross at Golgotha outside of Jerusalem, a similar question is posed. What do we make of this man Jesus? How do you explain the complexity of someone who did many, many good things, but now hangs as a criminal, dying a death of shame, rejected by everyone around him? How do you make an assessment of his life? Come to Matthew 27 with me if you can, and we'll see if we can work it out. See, the thing is, you get two very, very different stories here. On the one hand, you hear a whole range of responses that I'll call a montage of mockery. People who wander past, who mock Jesus. But there's also a second act to this biography. See, there's a series of unnatural occurrences, a series of supernatural events that also force us to ask the question, who is he? What is going on here? How do we make sense of his life when we see the darkness, the torn temple curtain, the earthquake, the tombs breaking open? They tell a different story. They open up a new and exciting possibility. So where do you find truth? In the montage of mockery or in the supernatural series of events? In the end, I want to ask you in a few minutes what you see when you look at the cross. So first of all then, story 1 really is a montage of mockery. And we heard it in the first reading as you listen to the people there at Golgotha, echoing the same chorus line as they walk past Jesus, mocking one after another as they see this man hanging on a cross. The people, the religious authorities, the civil authorities, the soldiers. I mean, the soldiers for a minute, these hardened army men, there to do a job. Back in verse 28, they put a scarlet robe on Jesus, a crown of thorns, and a scepter made from reeds, mocking him as the king of the Jews, spitting on him and beating him with this kind of makeshift scepter. They see nothing more than a pathetic king for a pathetic people. Nothing more than an object of scorn, of ridicule, of mockery. But maybe they can't be trusted to tell his story. They're just hired hands, mercenaries doing the bidding of the Roman government. Who else tells his story? We see the passers-by join in on this montage of mockery. Look down there at verse 39. They hurl insults at him. They quote back to him his own words. And the religious leaders as well, for goodness sake. He saved others. He cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross and we will believe in him. And to add insult to injury, the robbers hanging beside him. Verse 44, they too reviled him. Over and over and over again, this same story is told. This montage of mockery as Jesus dies. Everyone, it would seem, agrees. Here is another failed leader, a failed revolutionary, another fool who underestimated the power of Rome. And of course, it's a perfectly natural explanation. It's also a perfectly modern explanation. That is, many people will come to the same conclusion as they hear of this Jesus 2,000 years ago hanging on a cross. You might think that it's right that he was mocked. You might well think, if I was there, I would say the same thing. The famous poet, W.H. Auden, wrote himself into the script, if you like, 30 or 40 years ago, as he described himself in the crucifixion scene. Though he didn't identify with the soldiers, he didn't identify with the passers-by or even the religious leaders, he gave himself a different role, a different response, his own tweak on the events. This is what he said. Excuse me. I see myself as a Hellenized Jew from Alexandria, visiting an intellectual friend. We're walking along, engaged in philosophical argument. Our path takes us past the base of Golgotha. Looking up, we see an all too familiar sight. 3 crosses surrounded by a jeering crowd. Frowning with prim distaste, I say, it's disgusting the way the mob enjoys such things. Why can't the authorities execute people humanely and in private by giving them hemlock to drink, as they did with Socrates? Then, averting my eyes from the disagreeable spectacle, I resume our fascinating discussion about the true, the good, and the beautiful. That's a very Eastern Suburbs response, isn't it? Enjoying fascinating conversations about truth and beauty, but perhaps missing what really matters in life. I wonder what you see when you look at the cross. I wonder if this montage of mockery rings true for you. I want to suggest that this story neglects a bigger story. I want to say to only see this montage of mockery fails to see a bigger perspective. And to show you what I mean, I'm going to show you a very old ad from The Guardian. Thanks, guys.
An event, seen from one point of view, gives one impression. Seen from another point of view, it gives quite a different impression. But it's only when you get the whole picture you can fully understand what's going on.
I'm not endorsing The Guardian at any point right here. It's a cheap sermon illustration, that's all it is. And what I want to do as we look at Matthew 27 is really zoom out and say, is there another story going on here? Is it just a montage of mockery, or is there something else? See, I think as you look at story 2, you see a series of supernatural events that give us a very different explanation about what's happening here. This time, not from human eyewitnesses, but significantly from the cosmos itself, as the cosmos responds to what's happening on the cross. Look at verse 45. From the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. From 12 noon until 3 p.m. there was utter darkness. Now, this is not some weird northern European city that only sees light, every 5 minutes in the winter or whatever it is. No, this is Jerusalem. This is the middle of the day in a place that's never dark. This is unnatural darkness. And into this darkness we hear the voice of Jesus himself there, verse 46. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? And again, we see the people get it wrong. They misinterpret what he's doing as they think, he's calling for Elijah, and go scurrying around getting different things. And they'd forgotten that this is a quote from Psalm 22, a quote from another king, great King David, 1,000 years earlier. Another king under attack from his enemies. And we read in the Psalm, David say this, I'm scorned by humanity and despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They make mouths at me. They wag their heads. He trusts in the Lord. Let him deliver him. Let them rescue him, for he delights in him. When Jesus asks that question, when Jesus screams out, my God, why have you forsaken me? He's not asking for help. He's not asking a question that he doesn't know the answer. He's taking on himself the very words of King David, but now as God's perfect king, as God's king who will overcome this darkness. We know from Matthew's gospel, this is exactly where the story was going. From the very beginning, from before Jesus' life, the angel came to Joseph and said, he will save his people from their sins. Jesus prepared his disciples over and over again that he must die. At the Last Supper, he passed them the cup, saying, this is my blood poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. And only moments ago in the Garden of Gethsemane, he knew his death was coming, and he pleaded with his Father for another way. My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. So why does he cry out into the darkness like this? Why break the blackness with this scream? Here is the only way that God's rightful wrath could be satisfied. Here is Jesus accepting the agony, accepting the shame, accepting everything on his shoulders that you and I deserved. Here is Jesus accepting the story of separation, of humiliation, of shame, of everything that us as humans require for our sin. Friends, Jesus is not a good guy who got stuck in a bad crowd. He willingly accepts the cross and all it involves, so that we might have a better story, actually. This is a better explanation than the cacophony of the crowds, the montage of mockery. These unnatural events in Matthew 27 tell a better story. But why? And keep reading. Look down at verse 51. Another unnatural event. Behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. Now, for most of us, a torn curtain is hardly newsworthy. A strange coincidence, maybe, on an altogether strange day. But what does it mean? How does it help to understand this story? How does it help to make sense of his death? Well, the curtain was not hanging in any old building, it was in the temple. And it effectively separated everyone from the most holy place. God is holy and perfect and righteous, and people are not. We cannot come together. There must be separation. And so this temple curtain stood 60 feet high, 20 meters high, from the base of the floor to the highest point in this ceiling. Hanging there as a visual reminder, you cannot come in. It separates the holy place of God from people who aren't. The place of God, the God who is perfect and holy and clean, from people who aren't. But at the cross of Jesus, this barrier, this obstruction comes down. All of a sudden, the path is cleared. Unholy people can come into the presence of a holy God. People who've messed up, people who've made mistakes, people who have regrets, people who've been rejected. People like us can find forgiveness and a home and a family through the death of Jesus. There's one more supernatural part of this story. If you look down at verse 51, the earth shook and the rocks were split. The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. It's a little bit weird. I don't know if you can imagine that. Hard to work out what's going on here. But again, see what the story tells us. This is what happens when Jesus takes our sin on his shoulders. There is new life. There is the possibility of life now beyond the grave. Death is no longer our enemy. Life and joy can be ours forever. The incredible offer Jesus made earlier in Matthew's biography makes sense. It's on that window directly in front of me. From Matthew 11, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Bring your burdens to this King. For those who need rest, this is the answer. Here is your King. Here is the end of darkness. Here is hope beyond death. Here is hope beyond COVID. Here is hope beyond cancer. Here is hope beyond all our longings. Here is life and joy. Here is an end to isolation. The people at the time largely missed it. They missed this story. What the natural world declares, most people missed. What the temple curtain reveals, what the open tombs confirm, most people chose to ignore. I wonder if you can see it. I wonder what you see when you look at the cross. Now, I don't want to rush you to a decision in any way, but I do want to ask the question. And I do want to urge you as an adult to make a decision. It may well be the case that you need more time. And one of the things we do here as a church is we seek to help people connect with what's going on here. And so we run this course. A whole bunch of you have done it, Christianity Explored. It's a course that helps people explore Christianity. It's amazing. And so if that's something that you would like to do, I would heartily encourage you. And so we run this each term, and what you can do is to jump on the website, Matthias.church, and say, hey, please sign me up for that course, or let me know when it's happening again. And you can join many of us, actually, who've been part of that and seen what it is to make sense of life this way. Friends, I want to finish with a word from Hamilton. I'm so sorry if you haven't seen it yet. You are blessed. This musical kind of takes us from this incredible career of Hamilton to his failures. And towards the end of the second act, we hear a profound song of deep longing. And we're confronted with the deep humanity of Hamilton. And not on his lips, but on the lips of his wife, who's been so publicly shamed and wronged. She screams out that she wants to burn. She wants everything to burn. She wants to burn the narrative that her husband has written. She wants to burn the letters that he's written to his mistress. She wants everything to burn, and frankly, she wants him to burn as well. But then in the very next song, everything changes. Her sister Angelica sings on her behalf about the possibility of undeserved forgiveness. The bridge repeats the line, forgiveness. Can you imagine? What she calls a grace too powerful to name. At the cross of Jesus, we see exactly what grace is. We see exactly more than a possibility for forgiveness. We see the perfect Son of God dying a death that we deserve, going through a darkness that should be ours, for forgiveness. And yet so few people see it. But the narrative, this second story, closes with one group who do see it. Not a religious group, not a group of good people necessarily, just some young men doing their jobs as Roman soldiers, led by their centurion. They actually step apart from the montage of mockery. They see more than just a man on a cross. They've witnessed the earthquake. They've witnessed the tearing of the curtain. They've tried to make sense of this unnatural darkness. They look at Jesus and give an explanation. On the lips of the centurion, truly, this was the Son of God. Here is the right response to the story. Here's what it means to see Jesus' death as it really was. What do you see when you look at the cross? We're going to stand and sing again as we reflect on these things. Thanks, guys.